Tonight on Bridge City News, many in Lethbridge put on green shirts and remembered a humble Bronco who helped give the gift of life. Kevin Cooey and his Team Canada foursome came up a bit short at the World Men's Curling Championships at the NMAC Centre. And UCP leader Jason Kenney was in Medicine Hat today with a special message for volunteers.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. The taps to British Columbia will be turned off. Now that's the message from UCP leader Jason Kenney, who made a campaign stop in Medicine Hat earlier today. Kenney says if his party forms government, he will not only repeal the carbon tax, but force BC's hands on the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion and implement Bill 12.
The very first measure of a United Conservative cabinet will be proclaiming into law so-called Bill 12, the turn off the taps legislation. The NDP passed that legislation through the legislature a year ago as part of their fake fight, a bad act of political theater. They never intended to use it. That's underscored by the fact they never proclaimed it into law. And so it's basically just an empty gesture. We'll turn it into a real law, indicating to the and New Democrats in Victoria that if they block our energy, we are prepared to use that. And with gas prices in Vancouver today pushing $1.70 a litre, this is a very strong point of leverage.
Kenney also said the UCP would consider holding a referendum on equalization payments. An NDP candidate in Medicine Hat has had to withdraw from the provincial election after being charged with assault while campaigning. The party confirmed on Sunday that Jason Soklovsky withdrew his candidacy. Police say he was involved in an altercation with another person and has been charged with assault. The party will announce a new candidate for Medicine Hat very soon. Soklovsky's Twitter account and Facebook page were taken offline, and his name and photo have disappeared from the NDP's website. A study done by the Alberta Federation of Labour shows the UCP fiscal plan would cut 60,000 public and private sector jobs over 4 years. The study showed the NDP plan would eliminate 5,500 over the same period. The Alberta Federation of Labour commissioned economist Hugh McKenzie to analyze the party's platforms. The UCP and NDP have not yet commented on the report. The Alberta Party says if elected, it would create 6,000 new jobs in our province's agriculture and agri-food industries. Leader Stephen Mandel says the plan includes a focus on export markets. It also includes for modernization of the Alberta Financial Services Corporation, which provides crop insurance, livestock price insurance, farm and commercial loans. Mandel says changing the way products are grown, raised and sold will create a healthier environment and a stronger economy. So what are the biggest issues heading into the April 16th vote? We asked Dr. Jeffrey Hale, a political science professor from the University of Lethbridge, that very question.
I don't think there's one issue that is going to make or break the election. We have about 20% of the people in the polls who are undecided. And while the polls tell us that the economy is the top of mind issue, there's enough confusion between people on what the best approach to take, given the challenges the province's economy is facing, that I don't think that we're going to see this sort out until the very end.
Catch the full interview with Paul Arthur and Dr. Hale, also discussing how Calgary may be the deciding factor in the provincial election. That's coming up after Business News. Sunday was a very special day across Canada. It was Green Shirt Day, a day to raise awareness for organ donation and to remember former Humboldt Bronco Logan Boulay. Boulay signed up to be a donor, and 6 people benefited from his organs. As Loris Alexander explains, his gift not only saved lives, but also sparked the Logan Boulay effect.
As the first ever Green Shirt Day arrived across Canada on Sunday, millions did their part to promote the importance of organ donation.
Without the massive tragedy, it wouldn't have been near the story. It would have been a story in Lethbridge, that's it, for Logan. And it would have been a short story, and then we would have moved on. But because of the Humboldt Bronco tragedy and all the people that passed with Logan and the survivors that are still with us today, it became a massive story. It captured the nation's eye and the world's eye, and we are here today. And it makes us now makes me very, very proud. We're asked this question many, many times. And at the beginning we'd say, well, if this is the silver medal, we'll take it. But now it's like, it is the silver medal, and I'll gladly take it.
Tara Murphy, a volunteer for Green Shirt Day, said she has been touched by the Humboldt Broncos tragedy and wants to do everything she can to spread awareness in its wake.
As a Canadian, we all felt like we wanted to do something, and You know, we come from Airdrie, Alberta, and the home of Ryan Strasnitsky, so it's personal for us already. They're very good friends of ours. So when I saw the ability to do something, we've done this in the past. I did it for World Mental Health Day for a few years. So I had the ability to contact people, and I just, you know, why not? I mean, it's something such a simple task, and I mean, it's trending. So it's doing the job and it's getting people's attention, and that's what this is all about, is getting awareness out there.
Despite the devastating loss, Michaelin Ives, Logan's girlfriend, said not only is her best friend living on in 6 people, but he's also inspired countless others.
It's been really difficult, I'm not gonna lie. I really miss him, and like, it's hard to see all my friends, you know, like moving on with their lives and me missing out on things, but it's nice to see like the legacy that not only Logan has, but the Humboldt Broncos and all those boys. So,
with more than 100,000 people registering, it's the largest amount of people to become organ donors in Canadian history. That's the Logan Boulay effect. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Kevin Cooey dreamed all week about winning the World Men's Curling Championships in his home province, but unfortunately fell short as he lost 7-2 to Sweden's Nick Edin. Ainsley O'Reilly breaks down last night's loss for Canada at the NMAC Centre.
Kevin Cooey didn't get the storybook ending he was looking for. The game remained close until Sweden's Nick Edin stole 2 points in the 8th end and stole 3 more in the 9th.
Kind of wrestled away control, and we were tied up with plane 8, and we should win after that more than we lose, and just, you know, to give up a steal at 2, you're going to lose most of the time after that. So that was the big turning point.
After the match, Edin says he felt like crying.
Obviously, as a kid, you're dreaming about winning these kind of events, and then pretty early on in our careers, we started winning international events. So obviously, we've had those kind of thoughts, and as you win one and then you win 2, and then the talk comes around as well, especially in media. You get compared to others, and you see what others do before you and stuff.
In the end, Cooey could only clear 1 stone on an attempted quadruple takeout, and it was over.
They made every shot that end, and we just couldn't. You know, we need a miss at the end of the day. We're taking our chances. We're not playing to, you know, keep it close and be one down with. We went hard to, once he threw that guard, we threw 2 guards and hope we get a bit of a miss and maybe get 2 or 3 on him. But, you know, we didn't have much at the end.
Despite the devastating loss at the closing ceremonies, the entire NMAC Centre stood up and applauded when Cooey's name was called. Nick Edin, on the other hand, calls this the sweetest win of his career. He is the first international skip to win 4 world championships. 3 of those were on Canadian soil. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
This is National Volunteer Week, a chance to celebrate those who donate their time. In recognition, the University of Lethbridge held a flag-raising ceremony earlier today at the U of L bus loop. Officials say volunteers' contributions added $50,000 to the local economy. More than 300 students donated more than 2,200 hours of their time.
We think that volunteering is important. Part of the goal of a university is to envision this kind of society we want to live in and then make it happen. And volunteering is one of the ways to do that.
We each all have something within us that we can give back that's easy for us to give back. And what better way to do that than through volunteerism? And there's so many diverse ways that people can engage in volunteerism. So it's just, the secret is finding out what you love to do and finding a way in a place where you could do that.
When I got the ability to become a community education presenter at the Schizophrenia Society, it was really important for me. So I go into classrooms and I talk about what it's like living with schizophrenia and trying to break down those like stigma barriers around it.
I started doing it without realizing I was doing it. It just kind of became part of who I was and something I really enjoyed doing on the weekends. And also I really enjoy seeing the feedback I get or the way it makes me feel.
As I'm looking forward to the rest of my degree here, I'm able to make connections that will help me out in the rest of my life.
I have someone in my family who has autism, so volunteering with Special Olympics is just so rewarding because it gives me something to do every single week, and it's just so incredible.
There were also 650 U of L alumni who volunteered in 2018, helping to raise more than $100 million towards initiatives like the Shine campaign. Flags will be flying at half-mast tomorrow at City Hall to mark the National Day of Remembrance of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. The battle took place during the First World War, and it was the first time all 4 divisions of the Canadian Corps went into battle together. The victory at Vimy Ridge came at a steep price as Canada suffered more than 10,000 casualties, including close to 3,600 soldiers who were killed. Mayor Chris Spearman made a major announcement at the ATB Centre today. Phase 2 of the facility, which includes the Corps Van Ray YMCA, will open its doors to the public on May 4th. Video journalist Naveen Day took a tour of the 256,000 square foot leisure center and says there's no shortage of space or amenities.
The nearly 3-year wait is soon to be over for those excited to try out the new Westside Leisure Center. The City of Lethbridge and the Corps Van Ray YMCA announced the public will be able to start using the facility when it has its soft opening on Saturday, May 4th. Mayor Chris Spearman says no matter what side of the city you live on, it's everyone's leisure center.
This is going to be a tremendous facility which can be accessed by people of all ages. People can come from across the city to use this. This is a Lethbridge facility, so we hope that seniors will come, we hope that students will come, we hope that families will come, and people with all abilities will come.
Over 250,000 square footage includes 6 basketball courts and an aquatic center with several attractions, including a flow rider that you can use for indoor water surfing.
Our goal is to build healthy communities, and this facility will enable us to do that here in Lethbridge and the surrounding area in such a more significant and important way than we've been able to do previously in our old facility down in Stafford.
In addition to swimming, sliding, and floating in the lazy river, you can even have a birthday party here and rent a bouncy castle that floats in this pool. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Construction of Phase 2 of a special 73-acre park in North Lethbridge began today. Workers were out at Legacy Park helping to create more parking as our city expands. City of Lethbridge Parks Manager David Ellis says construction will help to accommodate future growth that will include construction of the community pavilion, spray park, and picnic shelter. The Horticultural Society will also be building new gardens and waterfalls. Construction is expected to be completed by the end of June. The Alberta Construction Association is asking the province to pay companies tens of millions of dollars owed to them for work on the new Grand Prairie Hospital. The association says it has been more than 300 days since some of the original contractors were paid. The group believes non-payment is a result of a dispute between the government and Graham Construction. The province says it was cancelling its contract with the Calgary-based builder, which had warned the hospital would not be built under the current budget because of design changes. Federal Conservative leader Andrew Scheer is challenging Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to follow through with a threat to sue him over his assertion the PM interfered in the criminal prosecution of SNC-Lavalin.
1 week ago, I received a letter from a lawyer representing Justin Trudeau, threatening to sue me for my criticisms of his actions in the SNC-Lavalin corruption scandal. You all have copies of that letter. Upon receiving Mr. Trudeau's letter, I immediately consulted with my legal team, and after careful consideration, I was advised that Mr. Trudeau's complaints were without merit. I stand by every single criticism I have made of Mr. Trudeau's conduct in regards to the scandal, including those Mr. Trudeau's lawyer cites in his letter. They are all based on the facts that have emerged from parliamentary testimony and irrefutable evidence presented by Jody Wilson-Raybould.
Police in Phoenix, Arizona say 3 people died and 3 firefighters were injured when a pickup truck and a fire engine collided. Authorities say one of the victims was a 6-month-old baby. The man in the truck was pronounced dead at the scene, while a woman and the child later died in hospital. Police say firefighters were responding to a call at the time of the crash. All 3 firefighters who were injured are in hospital in stable condition. Keith Urban was named Entertainer of the Year at the Academy of Country Music Awards last night. Country music legend Reba McEntire made the very special announcement.
And the winner is Keith Urban!
I'm running out of time. Baby girl, I love you so much. My team, thank you, every one of you. To the fans out there, you are amazing. You have no idea how much you mean to me.
Congratulations to Keith Urban. A mainly cloudy day and some rain is in the forecast. Complete weather details are coming up. Lots of clouds today. Tonight, a chance of showers developing with a low near 3 degrees. Clouds and showers tomorrow with a high near 8. Wednesday, the rain should taper off, bringing us a high near 11. A mixture of sun and cloud, and 11 as well for Thursday. Mainly sunny and a high expected near 10 on Friday. A nice weekend is shaping up. Mainly sunny and 14 on Saturday. Sunday, sun mixed with clouds and a high near 13 degrees. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 11 and an average low of -2. The highest temperature on this date was recorded in 1977 at 26 degrees, and the record low was -12 in 1997. Sunrise was at 6:54, sunset at 8:12. Looking at the national forecast for tomorrow now, Victoria will be mainly cloudy and 12. A good chance of rain and 13 for Vancouver. Showers and 8 degrees is on tap for Calgary on Tuesday. Mainly cloudy and 13 for Edmonton. Just a few clouds and 9 is expected in Regina tomorrow. Mainly sunny and 8 for Saskatoon. +1 and sunshine is on tap for Winnipeg. Showers and 12 for Toronto tomorrow. Ottawa should receive snow and get up to 0. A freezing rain warning for Montreal on Tuesday and a high near 3. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick had snow today, more light flurries tomorrow and a high near +1. Snow mixed with rain and +2 for Halifax, Nova Scotia. Charlottetown, PEI will also receive snow and should get up to the freezing mark. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect sunshine and a high near 2 degrees tomorrow. The head of Alberta Barley says the industry has been lucky that feed barley is in short supply around the world following a feud between Canada and Saudi Arabia last summer. Dave Bishop says Canada had been shipping around 122,000 tons of feed barley to Saudi Arabia annually. That amount can sometimes reach 10% of all Canadian exports of the product. The feud followed criticism by Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland of the regime's arrest of women's rights activists. Since then, Canada's been shut out of the Middle Eastern country's market. Bishop says extra demand from countries like China have helped make up for the loss. Canada's National Housing Agency says the seasonally adjusted annual rate for housing starts was up 15.8% in March compared to February. CMHC says the rate of starts climbed to just over 192,500 units last month. Economists had expected around 4,000 more, however. Starts of condos, apartments, and townhouses increased 18.6%, while the rate of single detached urban homes rose just over 12%. The 6-month moving average of housing starts held steady at 202,279. More families of victims of the Lion Air crash in Indonesia are suing Boeing. The company's chief executive apologized last week and said a software update for the MAX 8 jet would prevent future disasters. Lawyers say the comment related to the jet's automated flight system was an admission that helps their cases. The anti-stall system is suspected as a cause of the MAX 8 crashes last October in Indonesia and in Ethiopia last March. The 2 crashes killed a total of 346 people. Early reports say the faulty sensor readings triggered the anti-stall system that pushed the plane's nose down while pilots struggled to regain control. Pinterest wants to raise about $1.5 billion US in its initial public offering of shares. The digital scrapbooking site says in a filing today that it will put about 86.3 million shares up for sale. The target price will be between $15 and $17 each. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the taps to BC will be turned off. That was the message from UCP leader Jason Kenney, who made a campaign stop in Medicine Hat earlier today. Kenney says if his party forms government, he will not only repeal the carbon tax, but force BC's hand on the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion and implement Bill 12. Kenney also said the UCP would consider holding a referendum on equalization payments. The Alberta election is just around the corner on April 16th. Up next, Paul Arthur chats with a political science professor from the University of Lethbridge about who may become the next premier. That interview is next. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come out for an entertaining evening as Father Leonard Van Tighem Performing Arts presents an original musical production called Cursed Through Time on April 10th and 11th at the University of Lethbridge Theatre. Enjoy a charming and magical tale of friendship, family, and the dreaded middle school experience. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. with the show starting at 7. Tickets are $10 for adults, $8 for students, and are available at the door or can be purchased at the school office. For more information, visit holyspirit.ab.ca/FLVT. Come for a fun time and help support a worthy cause. The Kidney Foundation Southern Alberta branch is hosting a 3-kilometer and a 6-kilometer walk or run on Saturday, May 11th at Henderson Lake Park. The route is designed for walkers, runners, strollers, and participants with limited mobility. Register individually or as a team by calling 1-866-956-2724 or go online to kidneywalk.ca. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The provincial election is sneaking up on us quickly, and there's a lot going on with politicians jockeying for position. Joining us today to provide some analysis on this is Dr. Jeffrey Hale, a political science professor at the University of Lethbridge. So good to have you here again, Jeffrey.
Thank you for inviting me, Paul.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, is there one main issue you think that jumps out? This is going to make or break the whole election?
I don't think there's one issue that is going to make or break the election. We have about 20% of the people in the polls who are undecided. And while the polls tell us that the economy is the top of mind issue, there's enough confusion between people on what the best approach to take, given the challenges the province's economy is facing, that I don't think that we're going to see this sort out until the very end.
Okay. Of course, carbon tax, pipelines, always at the forefront, it seems, of any political conversation here as well. Is this as much of an issue for the voters as it is to the politicians?
If you are in oil and gas, if you are in construction, if your job depends on the supply chains that are supplying these industries, if you're out of a job because the contracts have dried up or slowed down, it's a huge issue. All the information that we have is that there is a great deal of economic anxiety out there, and it is going to depend on whether you're in the public sector or the private sector as to how you respond to that anxiety.
What about here in the Lethbridge, Southern Alberta area now? We're not as dependent on the oil and gas industry unless you're in Medicine Hat in that area. So right here in Lethbridge, do you think it's, again, less of an issue?
Lethbridge is more of a public sector community than, although there is a certain amount of industry, a lot of it is agri-food. Parts of the agri-food industry are suffering, but not because of North American politics or domestic politics as much as politics with China. But I think the part of the challenge is how do people respond to the idea that we have to pull in our belts to so that we don't keep maxing out the credit card for day-to-day expenses. There's debates on how you attract investment, but at some point we have to work within our means, and the question is who has the most credible approach to doing that.
Right. What about the leaders' debate? That was, again, lots to do with credibility and selling yourself and your party in this. It didn't seem like there were knockout punches delivered. Any thoughts on did one person kind of finish out ahead of another one in this one?
I don't think so. Each leader was looking to reassure their base that they were in control. And Mr. Khan, the Liberal leader, Mr. Mandel, the Alberta Party leader, were trying to get a clear photo op so that voters would actually notice them. And I think for a lot of people, because Mr. Kenney and Ms. Notley were going after one another quite aggressively, people may have appreciated the more issue-oriented positions of the two other leaders. Whether that does them any good on Election Day or not is an open question.
Well, that's another question, I guess, is do you think the debate will significantly sway voters this way or that way, or is it one of those things that's kind of probably not going to have a huge impact like it did last time?
I don't think there was anything in the debate that would cause most people to change their mind if they had made up their mind. And I'm not sure how much there was if you were undecided that would make you change your mind one way or the other, or make a firm commitment one way or the other.
That was my sense as well. Now, you know, this is probably a two-horse race. Most people see it that way. The NDP, they've been pushing hard on the social issues, trying to put a wedge there, I guess, between themselves and the UCP, LGBT issues, abortion, racism, those kinds of things as well. It certainly worked in the past. Do you think it's going to have any kind of an impact this time?
I think it will depend on which group of voters that you're talking about. I think there are those who are economically comfortable but socially liberal, to whom it will definitely make a strong appeal. In some of the ethnocultural communities which have more traditionalist values, it may not sell quite as well, because in pointing the finger at Mr. Kenney, it may end up pointing the finger at them as well. This is what happens when you call people who disagree with you white supremacist without specific individual evidence, which is a bad habit that certain people in the political system have. So if you don't agree with me, you're a racist, a bigot, and so on. And so that rhetoric will sell in certain communities, and in others it will be profoundly off-putting.
So sometimes, yeah, that's the problem, I guess, with you throwing mud. Some of it sticks to yourself as well, right? And yeah, boy. It was predicted to be a nasty campaign, and I guess it is showing up from time to time that way as well. It'll be interesting to see over the next week and a half if things, ramp up in this department as well. Now, a couple of very different approaches to dealing with the provincial budget. We can keep running deficits, right? Keep spending on social programs, education, healthcare, the big money grabbers, right? Or we can endure some pain, I guess, for some period of time and actually, either freeze or cut back on some of these spending things. What are the voters ready to buy in this one? I mean, two very different approaches. Do you have any sense at all?
I don't think the voters function with one mind on this. If you are a family that is dependent on public sector employment, directly or indirectly, right, the notion that your frontline spending might be squeezed in terms of higher classroom enrollments or limits on hiring to deal with additional demand may be of great concern, and certainly your unions will be trying to encourage you to believe that. If you're in the private sector and you have pulled in your belt for the last 4 years, you may think it's somebody else's turn and that we can't keep maxing out our credit cards to pay for the groceries. And so those are two different, if you look at the polling data that is out there, there is a sizable gap in attitudes between people who depend on the public sector and people who depend on the private sector, recognizing, of course, that there are people whose livelihoods overlap between the two.
Yeah, I think most people, even those in the, again, public sector, do realize, though, that something needs to happen somewhere with a ballooning deficit and debt. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next week and a half here. But now, healthcare, part of this campaign as well, always is. The NDP painting the UCP proposal to introduce some types of privatization. What exactly that's going to look like. I mean, they're painting it as being an American-style approach to healthcare, right? Again, how is this being absorbed by the electorate? Any thoughts on that?
I don't know that they've processed it. To call this privatized Medicare is like saying that if your doctor isn't on salary with the government, they're privatized. The bottom line is that if there are medically necessary procedures, they will be paid for by the government one way or the other. The question is, how do you add capacity, right, given the growth in waiting lines in spite of increasing spending over the last 4 years? Are there more efficient ways of bringing on new capacity that people can access through the public system, even though other people's dollars may be putting them into place? And the question is, how much do people understand the distinction? It's in the Conservatives' interest to clarify that distinction and make clear that this is a means of helping people get through the waiting list faster without having to put their credit cards down, as the NDP is suggesting. And for the NDP, it's a way of scaring the living daylights out of voters who may not be informed enough to tell the difference.
You know, I think it would, I think it's scary for a lot of us if it really is American-style healthcare. We don't want that here. I think most of us would agree with that. But I think you make a good observation that, I mean, what you're talking about here could very well be more like what they have in the UK or Switzerland or Sweden. Again, it's a mix of public and private that seems to have some measure of success in these countries, right?
Well, all the European countries have private provision paid for from the public purse.
Okay.
And if you can't tell the distinction between a social democratic delivery of healthcare with that kind of mix and American-style healthcare, you're either being dishonest, or your capacity to draw distinctions isn't all that great.
So this really boils down to, can the UCP sell this, I guess, or I guess communicate this effectively so people understand what they're proposing. So that'll be interesting to see too. Now, rural and southern Alberta has historically, been conservative territory when it comes to politics. Very interesting, though, of course, in Lethbridge. We've had a number of Liberal and NDP MLAs over the years, though. So any thoughts on why that is? It's a bit of an anomaly.
Well, I think there's two reasons. First of all, that we have a sizable public sector base here that is responsive to higher levels of government spending and government interventions. And there's also an anti-establishment sentiment in large parts of the population that when the Tories were the establishment, people wanted to take a kick at the establishment.
So we're a little bit rebellious here in southern Alberta.
And many of the people who would vote Liberal or NDP provincially would vote Reform or Wildrose, in other contexts. And so I don't know that one can make that comparison. But I think the bottom line is that people's political identities, people's political loyalties are a whole lot more fluid than they used to be. There is not as strong an identification with one party over an extended period. And while you have strong partisans of all the parties, perhaps more so for the NDP and the Conservatives here right now, the average voter is a little bit skeptical and waiting to be persuaded.
Okay. Now, no Conservative split this time, really, probably. So the Lethbridge contest's likely going to be pretty tight. That's what it's looking like anyway. Are there any specific issues here in Lethbridge you think that could sway the vote this way or that way?
I think the issues that we've been talking about provincially will be the ones that drive voters' responses.
So very similar then?
So if you are concerned about public services, whether education or healthcare, you will be probably more responsive to the New Democrats. If you are concerned as a small business person that the government has been piling on costs and regulations and making it harder to make a living and meet payroll, then you will probably be much more oriented towards the Conservatives. And and if people are scared for their jobs on either side, they will vote what they see to be their interests.
What about Calgary? I mean, many people see this as the battleground. This is where it'll be won or lost. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but certainly a key area. And Calgary, again, very business-oriented, oil town. Is that what will sway votes there as well? As again, which party is perceived as best being able to boost their economy?
Well, Calgary is not a unitary actor in all of this. You have a downtown core and an inner city vote that will lean more towards the New Democrats. You have a sizable vote of people who voted for Naheed Nenshi in the mayor, and he's no Conservative. He probably leans more on the Liberal side of the equation. You have a large number of young families whose interests and whose loyalties aren't firmly established, and you've got a huge ethnocultural community and a very diverse ethnocultural community that will respond to people who approach them in their own contexts, plural. And so I don't know that you can. Paint Calgary either orange or blue, but I think you are absolutely right that the election will be decided in Calgary.
Okay, so that is the zone. Now, what about the ongoing, SNC-Lavalin affair with the Liberals, of course, federally? Could that possibly, transplant itself somewhat and influence the vote here, and specifically, I guess, I'm thinking of Premier Rachel Notley, because of her past, close ties with the Liberal leader, and, of course, Jason Kenney's been kind of trying to hammer that home. Is that having any effect, you think?
I don't think it's going to move the needle.
Okay.
Everything I see suggests that people are looking at Alberta issues in an Alberta context. Mr. Trudeau would probably find it hard to get elected dog catcher anywhere in Alberta in the next year. And the reality is, Premier Notley, to give her credit, saw the truck that was coming in her direction, driven by Jason Kenney, and she has worked very, very hard to change both her tone and her tactics to say, I will do everything I can, with regard to pipelines and helping people related to the oil industry getting back to work. So I think I think she has had the chance to pivot over the last 2 years. So if you like her approach to government, you will vote for Rachel Notley independently of what you think of Justin Trudeau. And if you don't like what the Notley government is doing, the association with Justin Trudeau is neither here nor there. You will vote for something else.
And would it be similar with the RCMP investigation into the UCP kamikaze candidate scandal? Is that swaying votes this way or that way, or is it, again, kind of along party lines?
Hard to say. Again, there's a large number of undecided votes, and it's the sort of thing that can put question marks in people's minds. From what we have seen, there were people who were careless, foolish, and perhaps not paying as much attention to the rules of the game as they ought to have been. And if you're a hard NDP supporter or a hard Conservative supporter, you will either confirm or rationalize your vote regardless.
Okay. Well, we've got to wrap things up here, but of course the polls, I mean, depending which poll you actually read, there are quite a variety of margins here. But the UCP still with a lead at this point. So in one sense, maybe it's Jason Kenney's election to lose. Is there anything that I guess would cause the other shoe to drop, sort of thing, that would cause things to just suddenly change? And we've seen it before, where things can change in the last, few days of an election. Is there anything that Jason Kenney needs to watch out for that could cause him to lose this yet?
I think the question is, are there any more surprises coming out of his candidates that have not been vetted or have not been processed by voters? That kind of last-minute surprise is one of the things that campaign managers often keep in their back pocket. For the New Democrats, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that there's anything that is radically going to change the needle. If they can't win votes on their own, the only way they can win is to put enough doubt in people's minds about Mr. Kenney that people make that choice.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Freedom of religion and freedom of speech are two fundamental charter rights in Canada, yet there's an ongoing legal and social battle to keep those freedoms in our country. Joining me now to discuss these important rights is John Carpe, President of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms. Welcome back to BCN, John.
Glad to be with you.
Now, one of the more recent free speech cases involves an Alberta Election Commission gag law versus Rebel Media. Tell me more about that.
Well, in the past, we've had election gag laws that restrict the speech of citizens during elections, some of which have been upheld by courts and others not. What the NDP has done in Alberta is a law that applies year-round, 365 days a year. If an advocacy group and that could be an environmentalist group or a business group or a union or something related to education or taxes or whatever issue. If you want to advertise, then you have to disclose who your donors are for even a donation as small as $250. And so this takes away from citizens their privacy rights to give anonymously. That typically we do enjoy that. When you give to a charity, for example, maybe the charity is very controversial, or maybe there could be 100 different reasons. You just want to keep it quiet. Maybe you don't want the left hand to know what the right hand is doing, right? And so typically with charities, you have a privacy right that you can donate, whether you donate $10 or whether you donate $1 million, that's going to be confidential. It's going to be between you and the charity. And now with this new law, if there's a group that, say there was a group that wanted to run radio advertisements about Bill 24, the law that forces teachers and principals to withhold information from parents about their own children. If somebody wanted to run radio ads, they would have to list the name and the city of anybody donating over $250 to that ad campaign. So it makes it very hard for advocacy groups to engage in advertising, because not everybody's got that wherewithal to be willing to, 6 months down the road, have their name and their city and the amount that they gave published on an Elections Alberta website. So that's the law that is being challenged by the rebel media, and my organization, the Justice Center, is intervening on the side of the rebel media.
And it's not just a problem for conservative groups. What's the response been like from the far left, who now has to publish the names of their donors advertising against big oil or maybe a handgun ban? You say these kinds of laws are actually a threat to democracy?
Well, they are, because it deters citizens from freely using their own resources, like your own money that you've worked for, that you've earned. It really puts a damper on you spending your own money towards a cause that you agree with. Thus far, I'm not aware of any left-wing groups that have been fined or penalized under the legislation. And I don't speak for any group, right? So I don't know why they're not opposed to it. Perhaps in some cases, they're getting most of their money from unions, and the union doesn't care if its name is listed as a donor. So we'll have to wait and see. But certainly it's negative impact on democracy across the board.
John, there's an interesting case happening in Ontario where a Christian couple looking to become foster parents ran into some religious discrimination with the Simcoe Muskoka Child Services Agency. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Well, it was a pastor, in fact. Pastor and his wife wanted to adopt children, and they went through a screening process, not unlike a couple in Edmonton, Alberta, who went through this in last year. But the Ontario couple went through the screening process and passed with flying colors all of the essentials. They were deemed to be psychologically stable and have a good marriage, and they would be good parents, and so on and so forth. But then the social worker at one point said, "Do you, you don't believe in the parts of the Bible that are outdated, do you? You don't believe in those parts?" And the pastor said, "Well, we believe in the entire Bible." And on that basis, they could not proceed further. And again, the big stumbling block was, do you agree with the government's perspective on homosexuality? That was the big stumbling block. There seems to be a concerted effort that if citizens who believe in biblical teachings, people who believe in a Christian sexual morality, are on that basis and for that reason are being denied government services or benefits, or their freedoms being trampled upon. And it's disconcerting, and it's not even that what Christianity teaches about homosexuality is not a central part of the religion. It's one, it's one piece of the puzzle, but it's not really a central dogma. But still, you've got that push.
Yeah, you've got the conflicting ideologies. And this isn't the first time this sort of thing has happened. I recall another case, I think it was in Hamilton, Ontario, where a Christian couple was denied because they refused to tell their foster child that the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus were real. But they won that case, correct?
Essentially, yeah. The couple took the Hamilton Children's Aid Society to court because the social worker there, and she was supported on this by her supervisors. That's what makes it so disconcerting, right? It wasn't just a rogue a social worker that then got a slap on the wrist and they straightened things out. But she was backed up all the way through to the top of the organization. She demanded that this Christian couple tell the two young girls in their care, who at that time were 3 and 4 years old, that they proactively tell the young girls that the Easter Bunny is real. And the couple said, no, we'll celebrate Easter. We'll even include an Easter egg hunt, but we're not going to say that the eggs were hidden by a large imaginary rabbit. And the children were taken away on 24 hours notice over their refusal to proactively tell the girls that the Easter Bunny is real. Fortunately, we now have a court ruling that can be of assistance to other foster parents and even adoptive parents to say that the government cannot trample on people's religious freedom in this manner if they want to adopt kids or be foster parents.
John, is there any way to stop these government agencies from doing this over and over again? I mean, it's ridiculous. Do they need to be sued, perhaps, to send a powerful message?
Well, there's the Easter Bunny case that we just talked about in Ontario. There was a second case in Alberta. A Christian couple wanted to adopt older kids, felt led to do that because frequently older kids are not adopted, right? People that want to adopt, typically they want to adopt a baby. And it was the same thing, would they be supportive of a same-sex attracted child? And, yes, absolutely. Well, would you encourage that child to explore his sexuality? And they said no, same as if we had a opposite sex attracted child. We're not going to encourage our kids to explore sexuality outside of marriage. And on that basis, they were denied, they couldn't move ahead with the adoption process. Now, we sued the government, and the government backed down and changed its position. And now this situation is, latest I heard, they were moving towards getting the adoption finalized.
Now, you recently saw a victory for free speech with Canadian feminist Megan Murphy, who ran into some difficulty with the Vancouver Public Library over her views on transgenderism. Tell me more about that.
Well, Megan Murphy has the audacity to say that trans women are not women. So basically she says, and a lot of other people say, if you're a guy who thinks that he's a woman, who identifies as a woman, who feels very strongly that he is a woman, well, all of that's well and good, but you're not a woman. That's what she said. And that is, characteristic of the time that we live in. Rather than engage in debate, people say that's hate. And so there are people in the transgender community said that she is a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist. She should be deplatformed. And there's some threats of disruption. And the Vancouver Public Library, which was going to host Megan Murphy, proceeded to threaten I think it was $2,000, a huge security fee. The Justice Centre represented Megan Murphy and said to the Vancouver Public Library, this is just unacceptable. And they reduced the fee down to a far more reasonable level. The event went ahead. Security was present. The protesters at the event, fortunately, were peaceful, so there was no disruption. There wasn't any shouting down of speakers. So all in all, it was a good outcome. Fair-minded people will welcome peaceful protesters. That's fine. But what's unacceptable is when people start shouting and screaming and banging drums and pushing or shoving or engaging in real disruption. That's unacceptable, and that didn't happen. And it was also good that the Vancouver Public Library backed down on this $2,000 security fee.
Now, John, you have a new team member there. Lindsay Shepard joined GCCF. Now, viewers may recall she was the teaching assistant at Wilfrid Laurier University who was harassed by her professors after she showed a portion of a televised debate featuring Dr. Jordan Peterson and his views on gender-neutral pronouns. What will her new position bring to the table?
Well, we're thrilled to have her. She is not a her political opinions are more on the left than they are on the right, and she's very strongly free speech. So she's going to take on speaking engagements and writing columns and helping to encourage university students to have their free speech clubs and have their free speech events. And yeah, generally focused on promoting campus free speech at universities.
Have our universities really learned anything from that Wilfrid Laurier case, or are they still repressing freedom of thought and speech?
We still have a long ways to go. There's the annual Campus Freedom Index comes out in September each year, and there are still far more F grades being handed out than there are A grades. But I think the continued pressure, what we're seeing now in Ontario and in the United States, in the United States, Donald Trump recently stated that the universities that do not uphold free speech rights are not going to get federal funding. So that's wonderful. Andrew Scheer, federal Conservative Party leader, has hinted at something similar. And in Ontario, we've got Doug Ford requiring universities to have free speech policies and to honor them, and there's a risk of funding loss. So this is great. We need that in every province. These taxpayer-funded universities need to be told that if they do not uphold free speech on campus, they're not going to get their billions and billions and billions of dollars from taxpayers. It's a fair and reasonable way to go, and so hopefully there will be more of that in other provinces.
Now, we had a controversial case last year with 26 independent schools challenging Alberta's Education Minister David Eggen over Bill 24, which violates the rights of parents and schools. Can you give us a bit of an update on that?
Well, there was a hearing in December before the Alberta Court of Appeal on asking for an interim injunction. We have more and more evidence coming forward all the time about what is really going on with gay-straight alliances. We were told 4 years ago, in March of 2015, when the legislation was passed, people said, oh, these are just peer support groups. They're a way for vulnerable kids to connect over pizza at lunchtime. You have nothing to get upset about. And now we've got evidence of a young girl being encouraged to use a boy's name, live like a boy, dress like a boy at school, use the boys' change rooms. And parents were not involved until after the girl became suicidal. Another case of a 15-year-old boy who was encouraged to take a day away from school to attend a Gay Straight Alliance conference, a day-long conference. And at that conference, he was presented with dozens of condoms and with a step-by-step instruction manual on how to engage in sodomy with color photos or color drawings rather. And he said, I don't know if my mom would agree with me missing classes for a day to go to this conference. And the school said, well, she'll never know, she'll never find out. Fortunately, she did find out. And this is what we're seeing through the court action, is that the Gay Straight Alliances are not these neutral peer support groups designed to support vulnerable students. They are clubs that are promoting an ideology that is hostile to what is taught about marriage and gender and sexuality by not only by Christianity, but by Judaism and Islam and Sikhism and other religions. So they are ideological clubs. And the court action, as long as the bad legislation is in place, it's going to continue. Not likely to get a hearing before early 2020 or maybe late 2019 if we're lucky.
John, we only have about 30 seconds left here. If we really want to be champions of diversity and tolerance, then don't we by definition need to allow all sides to be freely voiced? Your final thoughts.
Well, you've articulated that so well. To ask the question is to answer it. But we need to keep on exercising our freedoms, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, because as long as citizens keep on exercising those freedoms, they're going to stay alive. The worst danger in Canada to freedom is self-censorship of people no longer exercising their freedoms.
Amen to that. John Carpe, President of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, thanks so much for joining me again today.
Glad to be with you.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.